Hello, my darlings. Mother Raven here with another story to terrify and delight. This one is a Reddit nosleep by Tahmizzles called Mother Schizophrenia. When I was 12 years old, I was 12 years old when she first had an attack. I cowered in the corner of my room as she clawed at me. I didn't recognize her. My mother was beautiful. Her rose-petal lips, her tilting smile, her laughter floating like cherry blossoms in the wind. This thing looked exactly like her, but nothing like her. My father burst in to pry the beast away from me. He always brought me peace, but he's been dead for a long time, leaving me alone with just my mother. I loved her when she was herself. But when the demons crept from the ground to fill her head with anguish, she had no choice but to join them and to drag me down with her. I had her admitted to a mental hospital. The doctors were kind enough to take her in. I too was taken care of. The many years being tormented by her had left me in a less than healthy state. My mother had stayed at the institution ever since, and I had moved on. I found a girl, sitting on a bench by my favorite cafe, reading a book about giant robots fighting even bigger robots. I never found the series as interesting as I found her. We had one very special baby girl, my lovely Laura. She had such a cute little button nose, which I would always boop when I had the chance. When she became a teenager, obsessing over every voxel of her appearance, she blamed me for her nose being oddly shaped. It wasn't oddly shaped, of course, but people see what they see, as my mother had taught me. I had spent 19 good years without my mother, and though my heart ached to leave her like that, I had no other choice if I wanted to live a healthy life. But the bounds of a mother's love are inescapable. I woke up in the middle of the night to see her standing over me. She had a smile on her face, though not the sweet, tilting smile I had grown to love. Her face should not have been able to stretch to the proportions it did. Her gums were bleeding with the strain she was placing on them. Her eyes trembled in their sockets, gaping like full moons. Veins and arteries, purple and red, streaked across her face as she leaned closer and closer to me. I could smell her putrid breath, her horrifying aura enveloping me in terror. Saliva dripped down her chin as her trembling eyes locked into mine. "Dad?" I screamed and scrambled over my wife. I barreled out the door and down the hall. I looked over my shoulder and saw her snapping at my heels. She was on all fours, yet her arms and legs were elongated and thin like a spider's. I threw myself down the stairs, tripping in the process. The fall to the bottom was a long one, and I heard several of my bones crack as I did. I curled into a ball, pain throbbing across my skeleton. I lay there waiting for her to tear me to ribbons, but she never came. I turned and surveyed the area. She was gone, nowhere to be seen. My fear began to dissipate, and as it did, I realized that Laura's room was right adjacent to ours. I got up quickly and dashed up the stairs. Not Laura. She was not going to touch Laura. I burst into her room shouting. Her bed was a state of a mess. Sheets tangled, pillows strewn across the floor. She wasn't there. My mother had gotten her already. I turned and ran to my bedroom, slamming open the door. There, my mother was clinging onto my wife with her spidery arms, tears gushing down my wife's face. My mother shrieked, a bone-ringing noise I've never heard the likes of before in my life. I ran straight at her, grabbing her by the neck and slamming her to the ground. In one fell swoop, she was out of it. But I had to make sure. I pulled my arm back as far as I could. Then I sent it crashing down into her skull. I felt my knuckles crumble in their joints. I heard her thin skull crack and felt the life jolt out of her body. I'm sorry, Mother. No! I had never heard my wife scream so guttural before. Perhaps that was what triggered it. But suddenly the veil came off. The image of my daughter's skull caved in, her innocence flooding onto the ground in a pool will forever haunt my broken mind. Burning poison crawled through my veins, filling my lungs and chest, rising up in my throat like vomit, bitter and deserved. I looked down at my spotted hands so bruised and bloody, hands so filthy and dirty, hands that will never be clean again. My wife called the ambulance. They couldn't save my daughter. The police took me away. My lawyer saved me from prison. The judge sent me to an asylum. My wife committed suicide. My whole world fell to pieces. My psychologist assures me that he understands. And all the while, I didn't take my eyes off my hands. Thank you, my darlings. This was certainly a wonderful, terrifying piece. And the horrors and pains of mental illness are certainly real. And this could certainly happen in real life. I will leave you with this little tale, so quoth this raven, and I will see you next time, my darlings, under the trees.